I remember you did something where you took you put a cow upstairs in the school.
Well, on Halloween in our little town, well, all the towns in southern Alberta, it got to a point where everybody tried to outdo everybody else. The most dramatic things without anybody really getting hurt. A lot of things that you'd be probably put in jail for now. But so there was a guy across the street from the high school who was really pretty uppity. He felt like he was a little above and beyond most other people, but he had a very nice Jersey cow. And so we took the cow on a bale of hay and got her to go up on the second floor in the high school and opened the door to the custodial closet that had a big deep sink, and so we filled that with water and then left it dripping so there'd always be water in there. And it had an overflow so it wasn't going to flood anything. So we left the cow, and somehow, and to this day I still don't know how they found out it was my friend, but we had made a covenant that if somehow you talk and they catch you, you won't tell on each other. So I never got caught, so they made him scrub the floors on the second floor every night after school for about half an hour. He had to scrub another patch of the floor.
I'm going to take him out and grab it.
But the best prank for the teachers, we had one teacher that told horrendous fibs. Everybody used to think, how dare he tell us all these things that no way it could be true. Anyway, they just got some brand new toilet seats for all the men's restroom. They had nice black shiny seats and lids. And we were working with printer's ink up in the shop. And so it just clicked. So we went down and quick painted some of the seats, and then we dashed back up the stairs, and we watched, and sure enough, this teacher went marching in there. After a few minutes, he came out looking in all directions and kind of walked stiff. And after about 15 or 20 minutes, the principal came up to the shop. Well, nobody had printer's ink out. He walked around, he says, oh, he said, I thought you were using some printer's ink up here. No, we were all busy working on something else. But he had a funny smile. So I think he enjoyed it too. Because that stuff takes weeks to wear off.
Oh yeah. And I remember you were saying once, let's see if I can get this just right. I remember you did something else with a wagon. You put a wagon up on top of a...
Well, that's my older brother.
Oh, was that your brother?
Some of the... And nobody knows how they did it. Just brute strength, I guess. They took a chariot from... we used to have a big rodeo every year in that town, and this Ray Knight had chariots, and regular chariots. And they somehow put one right up on the telephone pole right in the center of town. There it was in the morning, balanced up on it. And everybody wondered, how did they do it? Nobody would talk. The only way I can see it was just brute strength. Maybe they had a rope and got it up there, and but some of the guys had to climb up there and get it to where it was balanced.
Now, what's your brother's name?
Laurie.
Laurie. Tell us a little bit about your parents.
Well, my father was in World War I and met my mother in England. She was
This is Lowell Budd, right?
Lowell Budd, yeah,
And Nellie
Nellie Rosa Rumble.
Rumble, that's right.
And he went to the branch, the church meeting, and met her, and so they were married, and came back and to live in southern Alberta after the war. And her sister came, her two sisters came, and her mother after their father died. So they all came from England to southern Alberta. But my dad was always a hard worker, and he started at the sugar factory as the ash man, hauling ashes out. But he got all his education by home study and doing it all on his own. So he got his first, third class, second class, first class engineer's papers, doing it all at his own study, and ended up being the master mechanic and chief engineer at the sugar factory. So
Wow.
very highly respected because he started at the bottom, and just all through his own, he would work 12 hours a day, and then we hardly ever saw him because he was in the back bedroom studying.
Hmm.
So he was greatly admired in town, and I know when they were building the swimming pool and they had to put the steel in the bottom, and everybody said, well, we don't know where to put the steel or how to put it. And so they said, well, we better ask Raymond Duncombe. He'll know how. And sure enough, he had never done that before, but he knew about the engineering of it. And he says, well, this is where you need this, and this is where you need that. So it was a learning experience for him. But we would never had a telephone, because when anything went wrong at the factory, they'd always say, well, we better get Raymond Duncombe. And so he wouldn't have a phone, because he said, if I have a phone, every time something breaks down, they'll phone me in the middle of the night. And so he said, we're not going to have a phone. A few times they phoned the neighbor. The neighbor had to, and Dad told the neighbor, just tell him no. And he told him at the factory, you don't phone my neighbors. A few times they came in a car to get him in the middle of the night. But he all through his own home study.
Hmm. What factory was that he worked at?
The Raymond Sugar Factory.
Huh. What about your mom? What can you tell us about her?
Well, she was a prankster.
That's where it comes from, huh?
Her and her sisters, they joined the church. And anyway, they were curious, and this woman was advertising she was a spiritualist. And so they decided they're going to go and see if this woman really is a spiritualist. So they went, and they all had to sit around this table, and she lowered the lights, and, and my mother said, really kind of scary, you know. And then the woman said, well, I always think it's necessary to have somebody sing before we get started. So my mother said they had just learned the song, We Thank Thee, O God, for a Prophet at church. So that her and her two sisters sang that song. But my mother said, that darn table, that woman got it to move. Nobody was touching it, but she says we got right out of there, and the branch press about had to fit James Gunn McKay, I think his name was. And then he had a long talk to him. But they just loved doing the little pranks, her and her sisters.
Hmm.
She lived to be 95.
Wow. Did I ever meet her?
I somebody has a tape. Karen probably has it. She has a tape of her telling all her wild stories. I think Karen has a copy of it at least.
Good, I'll give her a call. Good. You think? How about from your school days? What kind of fads and trends did you have? Do you remember?
Well, in Canada it was reading, writing, and arithmetic. There was no music classes, no art classes. It was all mathematics and spelling and history and chemistry and just all the regular class, but no frill classes at all. I don't know how it is now, but I remember having a political science class from Melvin King, and I always thought he was very smart. And he told us, he says, well, in the next few years the technology will change, that in your lifetimes many of you will have to change 5 and 6 occupations. All that has worked out. He just said everything's going to change. Technology's going to pour out upon the world, and it'll change everything over and over and over. It's right on target.
Yeah, that certainly happened.
See, that's just when we never had a TV. That's just when TVs really began to start. He just had a lot of good insight.
I remember hearing that you were a boxer for a while.
Yeah, I boxed. I used to box when I was just real young. Then when I went in the Army, I did some boxing.
It was the Canadian Army.
Yeah.
Were you good?
Well, no. Well, before I went in the Army, they had me matched against Jerry Whitback, who was about 13 or 14 inches taller than I was. And long arms, and he just kept me out there and beat me to death. I never forget that. But I remember in the Army, they asked for people who will join in the boxing, and so I said, well, I will. And so this sergeant major came and talked to me, and he says, that kid you're going to box is really a smart mouth. He says, I hope you just beat him to a pulp. He really needs it. And he went and told that kid the same thing about me. And I said to that kid, I says, the sergeant major would give you a line up on me, and we both laughed about it. It was just all for fun. In those days, boxing was not to beat the other person to a pulp, but to not let him hit you, and to hit him, not hard, just to lay the leather on him. But it's all changed, and now it is to pound their face to a pulp.
So it was more for points and sport back then.
It was for points, and it was a sport, but it all changed to violence now.
Now it's like a cockfight.
Yeah. And now they got women boxing, wrestling.
What kind of games did you play as a boy?
Red Rover, send somebody right over and kick the can. And we had a bishop who became the state president later, but we used to have Sunday school in the morning, and then you go back later in the afternoon for church. And so there was a lot of squirming and wiggling, and so he encouraged all the boys in the neighborhood to Sunday afternoon to play softball. And so it was just a kitty corner from his house on this empty lot. And so we'd play ball, and then we'd have to go home and get cleaned up and go to church. But we were all so tired we'd all sit there, and that's why he did it.
My mom used to send us out on really rambunctious days. She'd say, everybody get on your bikes, Take 3 laps around the block before you come back in.
Same motive. Yeah.
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 That's good. How did you meet Betty?
Well, my older brother Laurie went on a mission to Eastern Canada. She was about 12, and she played the organ in the branch.
At 12.
Yeah, and so she was talking to Laurie, I guess, and she was always worried because there was no boys. Who would she ever marry? There's no boys in the mission field there. And so he said, why don't you write to my little brother? So she started writing to me, and I'd get a letter once a month or something, and I'd answer about every 6 months. And then when I went in the war and realized that I'm going to be sent through Eastern Canada, and I was there 6 months before I went overseas, and so I went to visit her every weekend. Then I had a friend that didn't ever want to take his passes, so I used mine and his. So I only missed maybe 1 weekend in 6 months. So big brothers are handy for something.
Paul set us up on a blind date. That's how we met.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a shame I don't know anybody for Sam.
Well,
He's in
Sam
trouble.
will have a mind of his own, I think.
Yeah, I think he'll do just fine.
Yeah. You'll have to fight him off with a stick.
Now, were you born in the church then? You were.
Yeah.
Betty was not, though. Didn't her parents convert when she was a kid?
No, her father was a member, but her mother was not. And when Betty was 8 and was going to be baptized, her mother says, well, I might as well be baptized too, because it's all in the family. When her mother got her patriarchal blessing, she was not a member of the house of Israel. She was a Gentile. And she just couldn't learn the gospel. She had a German ancestry, and she'd say, "Yous guys." She'd always say, "Yous guys seem to understand it." She says, "I just can't make heads or tails of it." But she served as a Relief Society president and all the little jobs in the branch. And finally, well, it was after Betty and I were married. Finally, she got a testimony, very hard-earned testimony. And so when she got her patriarchal blessing, the patriarch said, "Isabel, you're not of the house of Israel, but you are a Gentile, but you've accepted the gospel, so you're entitled to all those blessings." But Joseph Smith was really right on target when he said for a Gentile, it's very hard for them to accept what they never really understood before they came to the earth. And we really saw it in her.
Huh. So how did she finally gain her testimony?
Just
plugging away at it.
Plugging away at it slowly, but she got a testimony even though she had a hard time understanding the doctrines, though she accepted them, you know. But she was such a good woman, and so slowly but surely she got that good feeling and realized that what it was. She probably would have a hard time explaining anything.
Mm-hmm. I never really thought about that, being a Gentile.
But she was, both Betty and Janet and Brian were all real enthused about the church and everything, so she just kind of came along with it all.
Tell us about what your favorite memories were as a father.
Well, we didn't have a TV, and we had all the kids, and they'd want to talk. We just sat around and talked evening after evening, you know. And I remember your
Little house full of girls.
Yeah, your mother was one of the little ones. And I remember the day that she rebelled. And she said, "I'm not one of the little ones anymore. I get to stay up later and talk." and I thought, well, you pled your own case, and you can